So this is part 2 in a set of the basics of homeopathy, and this is more about the general aspects of homeopathy, how it came about, who started it, what are provings, those kind of basic concepts in homeopathy. So this is just an overview, a little bit about the history, a little bit about the premise of the whole medicine. Homeopathy is its own complete and distinct form of medicine. The word homeopathy is based on the Latin word homeo, which means the same or similar, and pathy or pathos, suffering. So in homeopathy, we're trying to match up the person's suffering with a substance that causes that same suffering as closely as possible. And there are so many ways to suffer that there's a large variety of medicines. So this concept of treating something with a medicine that can cause that same suffering dates back to Hippocrates, who is considered to be the father of modern medicine, one of the first scientific minds in medicine, and someone who made it its own distinct field. He had much better results than his contemporaries, in part because he focused on prognosis, or what to expect and how to make somebody better, rather than focusing on diagnosis, what it is exactly, a name for it, and of course the modes of coming across a diagnosis at that time were much more crude than they are today. So he's the first one to say that like cures like. This is, in homeopathy, is known as the law of similars. Now, allopathy, allo means the opposite, and pathy, of course, is suffering again. So in allopathy, this is what we call a conventional Western modern medicine. It's applying a force that does the opposite, and usually fairly forcefully. So if the suffering is represented by a pink-purple circle, the medicine is represented by a bigger green square. So we're trying to overpower the body's natural response to things, which is considered to be the disease. So the disease is actually seen separate from the individual, and so you're just trying to treat the disease, not the person. And this can, of course, save lives. Sometimes people's reactions to things is what creates the problems and leads to death. So anaphylaxis, for example. In this case, you probably do want to do the opposite of what the person is naturally doing. The father of homeopathy is considered to be Samuel Hahnemann. He was a German physician and knew quite a bit about chemistry and knew a fair number of languages. This is in the late 1700s, and he became disillusioned with medicine and decided instead he was going to transcribe and translate textbooks, and this is how he earned a living. And he came across some references in a textbook that cinchona could be used to treat malaria for the reasons of it being quite pungent, and he came across some cinchona bark and decided to try it. He didn't actually think it was because it was pungent, because there's lots of pungent herbs that don't treat malaria. So when taking this bark, he discovered that he developed the symptoms of malaria. And he found when he applied it to other people, they also developed the symptoms of malaria. And he started a science with this. He started testing all kinds of medicines, and he started treating people again, and with great success. If you think that Samuel Hahnemann was very poorly looked down upon, this is not true. He actually was reaccepted back into the ranks of being a physician and teaching, and he taught large numbers of people. Now, provings are what we call the science behind the homeopathy. It is how we test what a medicine is. And usually there's at least two phases of a proving. One is you get the original substance and you test it on healthy or relatively healthy volunteers, and these are human volunteers, not animal volunteers who actually don't have a say in the matter. We actually look for this to do ourselves because we want to advance the science and the medicine. And ideally it's based on numerous trials. Very often it's a double-blind, placebo-controlled study, so some people are getting the proving and some are not. And the people that are participating, they don't know what they are taking. I guess you could do a study where you know what you're taking. It does probably skew the results, since a lot of the symptoms are going to be mental and emotional. But ideally, once you have this information, you want to verify its use in clinical practice. And so all this information should make it back into the books. So what gets recorded and incorporated into our books from approving include the dominant themes, so those themes or images that come up for the vast majority of the participants, physical symptoms, emotional symptoms, and mental symptoms as well. So emotional symptoms relate to the emotions. We're talking about fear, joy, anger, those kinds of things. Mental symptoms relate to how well the mind is functioning, so clarity of mind or dullness of mind, an inability or an ability to do mathematics or writing or reading, something like that. And we're always looking for the essence, the total picture, as complete as possible. So the gestalt of a particular remedy is what we are looking for. Now, when we're dealing with homeopathy clinically, one-on-one, we choose medicines in a highly individualized way. It's not based on diagnosis. It's based on the story, on the pattern that the person exhibits. And this is a pattern that's usually buried fairly deep within their psyche. But it is also a collection of their symptoms. So a person functions and acts like a human being, but somewhere deeply embedded they might have a story that doesn't belong to them at all. It's some kind of pattern that they believe, maybe not even consciously, is a part of themselves, and they actually don't need it. And this pattern creates a tendency to behave in certain ways, and this also affects the physiology and the biochemistry, because the person is one. So if somewhere in you, you have the story of a raven making decisions on a subconscious level, this will affect your personality, and it will affect you biochemically as well. And this is why we want the full story. And if we can get the person, the patient, to tell us what is their story very deeply, we can choose a remedy that will fit that. So it's a matter of just uncovering the person's unique experience. Now, when you're treating with homeopathy, depends on whether you're having an acute experience, like a flu or an injury. If it's acute, the action will be very quick. And this might be, you know, a bug bite, it might be some other kind of injury, it might be a high fever. These things respond fairly quickly. Now, if it's chronic, if it's something you've had for a long time, you can expect improvements to be slow and subtle. And the ideal is not to notice anything at all, no aggravations, nothing. You hopefully don't feel anything, maybe a slight shift, maybe a slight improvement in mood and energy, and then slowly on its own, your body, your mind, your emotions start to free themselves up. And for some, this is like the peeling of an onion, taking off the layers, the reemergence of symptoms, getting to the core of things. And we can talk about this at some other time, but like the onion, there actually is no core. So at the heart of every being is a freedom. So that was just a basic, quick introduction to homeopathy, about the medicine itself. There's also a video that I encourage you to check out about the remedies if you're curious. So what the remedies are, how they're made, and how you would take them. Thanks for tuning in, and tune in next time.